Newsfirst, face to face with Charlotte Benedict.
Welcome back. You're joining another episode of Face to Face. Much is happening in Sri Lanka's political arena, and it almost seems as if we can't keep pace with everything that is taking place, especially in this run-up to the election. Even after the President's media division announced that the presidential election will be held on time and the parliamentary election will be held next year, and that money for the parliamentary election and the presidential election will be allocated through the budget, or has already been allocated through the budget, there seems to be some skepticism over whether or not the elections will take place this year. Now, Sri Lanka is not the only country that is facing a crisis as far as elections are concerned. We saw the same thing happening in Pakistan. We saw the same thing also happening in Senegal, where one of the most democratic countries in the region, Senegal, was gripped in a crisis where people were protesting over and over again when the president attempted to postpone elections. However, this has now been struck down by the Senegalese Supreme Court. We will have to wait and see how that crisis will pan out. But these are all lessons for Sri Lanka. And to discuss these matters and more, of course, we've got with us parliamentarian Dr. Nalaka Godahewa, no stranger to the show. Thank you very much, Dr. Godahewa, for joining us on our program today. The big question now is that, well, we've seen political crises in Sri Lanka before, quite a lot in the past few years. Constitutional crises have been quite often, starting with the 52-day government, then moving on to the crisis during the COVID-19 period when Parliament was dissolved and the entire country was run by an interim cabinet. So this is nothing new to us. It almost seems second nature now. So the big question that everybody has right now is, will there be a presidential election on time this year?
Thank you, Shalan. Thank you for inviting me for the program. As far as the constitution is concerned, presidential election has to be held because unlike local government election and some other elections that was postponed, presidential election is very clearly stated in the constitution with the dates. So 1 month before the expiry of the current president's term, it has to be held. So basically before mid-October, new president must be installed. So if you want to change that, you have to change the constitution. So the only possibility that I see is some attempt to bring some kind of act to the parliament to change the system, which is possible. For example, now one of the most recent discussions is abolition of the presidency, which has come up again. So it's a discussion which was there sometimes back. Several presidents, when they were candidates, promised to abolish the presidency, but never did once they got into power. Suddenly it has come up. And that discussion is on, and some people are very aggressively pursuing this, and even talking to the opposition, trying to convince the opposition to get the support. So that's one way in which you can change the constitution and postpone the election, but I think time is running out. It seems very difficult at the moment.
So even at a time when the President's media division, of course this is quite an anomaly, you shouldn't really have the President's media division announcing that elections will be held constitutionally. That is the accepted norm. But however, for whatever reason that the President's media division saw it fit, they released a statement saying that presidential elections will be held in due course. So isn't this assurance enough for you? No,
I think what happens, you must understand the government is still negotiating the debt restructuring process, for which they have to depend on the foreign country's support. When they were making this effort to change the constitution and postpone the presidential election, I have a feeling they would have come under tremendous pressure from some external parties. Because in March there are a lot of negotiations to take place on the debt restructuring. Haircuts that was promised is not finalized yet. So probably to overcome that pressure, they may have issued this promise. But you have to take it with a pinch of salt. Right? I'm not 100% trusting that statement. Previous statements have not been delivered. However, as I said earlier, the only thing that I see preventing this situation is the time. Because if the presidential election to be held as per the constitution by in July, the election commission has to announce that. So that is only 4 to 5 months down the line.
We're almost done with February. It's March, April,
exactly.
May,
So
June.
if you want to abolish the presidency, there's a process. No, you have to bring an act to the parliament. You have to get the 2/3 majority. 2/3 majority somehow they might be able to get, because a lot of money can exchange, a lot of things malpractices can take place. No, but still thereafter it has to go for a
referendum of the people.
And referendum can be challenged. So all these things take time. So probably I think there isn't much time for them to do that.
So as it stands, you think there is a higher probability that the presidential election will be held rather than it not being held at all?
Yeah, presidential election has to be held. But one thing is possible, a parliamentary election before that is possible, because only thing that is preventing a parliamentary election being held is the financial requirement, because normally for an election of this nature, you need about 10 billion rupees.
Okay.
Now in the 2024 budget, 10 billion has been allocated for an election. The budget doesn't specify which election.
Okay.
So the election that is due is presidential. But if the government wants, President has the constitutional authority to call for the early parliamentary election, spend this money, and then with a supplementary budget, he can have the presidential election as well. So these are possibilities, theoretical possibilities.
But depending on, well, based on your political acumen, and of course since you are a parliamentarian involved in the processes, where do you see this going?
So, about a month or two back, there was a lot of discussion about the parliamentary election, and some politicians very categorically said, even some opposition politicians, probably with some context to the government, that it's a parliamentary election that is going to be held first. But to me, Shalan, I don't see what president is going to gain by having a parliamentary election. Imagine his situation. He has to have the presidential election in October, in any case.
So he can't have the parliamentary election and then say no money for the presidential election?
No money scenario will not work, because that's a constitutional requirement. He has to find the money. So if he has the parliament election first, he will have only about 2 months before the presidential election. So if he loses the parliamentary election, his party loses, it's a sure loss at the presidential election. So I don't see what he's going to gain by having a parliamentary election first.
So moving forward, let's discuss a bit about everybody is starting to come up with plans for the future and making their pitch to the general public, as all political parties do, before a presidential election or any form of election in any country. Partly Chambikaranavarka, his party put out a working plan, as they call it. They don't call it a policy document or a prospectus of sorts. It's a working plan. This is some things or things that we can really do as a country. Then there are other policy documents put out by the SJP, the NPP. So what's your contribution? I know you're an individual, independent parliamentarian, and there's only so much that you can do alone, but you have a group of 13 parliamentarians who broke away from the SLPP. Are you still together, or what's happening there?
Of the 13 people, there's a kind of a disagreement as to in which direction we should go politically, and there's a kind of a split at the moment. About almost 50% of us having decided to take one path, and the others have not decided what to do. Anyway, nothing is finalized yet. That will be announced probably during this month or next month. Coming to your statement about these working documents, I actually went through what Honorable Partly Chambikaranavarka has prepared. That's a good document, and there are many thoughts like that coming from the other parties as well, but no one has so far presented the final manifesto for a presidential election. What matters is eventually what will be the presidential manifesto. Each party, whether it is SJB or SLPP or NPP, have to tell what is going to be the manifesto. I'm waiting to see what will be that manifesto and what is going to be the content, because right now there are a lot of key issues to be addressed. If you look at the way the government is working right now, I can say with assurance they have no clue how to come out of this crisis. No clue whatsoever. They are saying the stability has come to the country, whereas no stability has come. It is just that we are not paying our debts. When we are not paying our debts to the extent about $5 billion a year, you have a little bit of a cushion. No? Last year we didn't pay 5 billion, this year we're not paying 5
So
billion.
our foreign reserves naturally rise?
Foreign reserves naturally rise, but not to the extent that you'd like to see. So from this year onwards, you have to start paying. When you have to start paying, where's money? I can't see that money being generated. So government has not come up with any plan to generate additional foreign revenue. So that's why I'm saying this cushioning is not economic stabilization, it's just an eyewash. So whoever comes to power next is going to face this serious problem. How are you going to run the country, offer solutions to the problems of the people, at the same time, how are you going to service these debts? And the manifestos must address this issue.
But I don't think the general public in Sri Lanka really has too much of trust in manifestos, because I mean, look at the document that you put out together with the SLPP, the Vistas of Prosperity and Splendor, you called it. Where did that lead us?
If you actually look at Vistas of Prosperity Manifesto, except one part which was squeezed in last minute, that is that tax reduction part, which I openly told at many forums, I did not agree when I saw that, because that was not something that people asked for. The rest of the manifesto I still stand by. And in fact, some of the politicians recently also have heard mentioning. I think yesterday when you had an NPP professional, he mentioned there was nothing wrong in that manifesto.
Yes.
But what's implemented, some of the key issues had nothing to do with the manifesto. For example, if you took the fertilizer issue, the Vistas of Prosperity clearly said that you need to introduce organic fertilizer over a period of 10 years.
Yes.
Whereas the government tried to do that in 1 year.
Yes.
So that has nothing to do with the manifesto.
I distinctly remember Rohit Abegunawardhan also speaking about this, and when he read that bit, he very conveniently skipped the 10-year part.
So what was said in the manifesto, I still stand by. So except the tax issue, when it was squeezed in last minute, I personally objected to presidential candidate Gotabe Rajapaksa, but then it was not listened to because somebody very powerful had squeezed that in. That didn't work out. But the rest of the manifesto, there was nothing wrong. For example, some of the things that were done, which was attributed to the manifesto, cancellation of LRT, was never in the manifesto. Right? Those are subsequent decisions. So you're right. In what sense, many governments come up with manifestos, but when it comes to implementation, they do otherwise. But what I'm saying is, now here we are in a serious crisis. We don't have much time to now play around. We don't have time to experiment, basically. Right? We are already in a crisis, and I don't see this government is coming out of the crisis. So if the next government is also going to start experimenting, we will sink further and further. So therefore, it's very important to know what these presidential candidates understand. Do they understand the crisis? Do they understand the solutions? That is what I'm looking for.
So there are a few names that have been already thrown into the hat for the presidential election. Based on your understanding, do you think any of these candidates are capable?
See, at the end of the day, you have to always select from the names in the ballot paper. Right? Sometimes we have our ideal leaders, imaginary leaders. If their names are not in the ballot paper, it's not of any use. So in the ballot paper, definitely two names are going to be there at the moment. I think SJB leader Sajid Premadasa and NPP leader Anuradha Sanayaka, they have openly told that they are going to contest. Others, including the current president, have not told that they are going to contest. So, but I see every day some Pohottua MPs very aggressively promoting that Ranil Wickremesinghe has to be the candidate. While some others are also trying to throw their names into the hat. So the third candidate, I don't know. But I believe this election is going to be a three-way contest. Usually it is a two-way contest, but this time it will be a three-way contest. There'll be probably two candidates giving a close fight to each other, and there'll be a third also getting far more votes than previous thirds got. Earlier, third candidate usually get about
a couple of hundred
thousands. This time, even the third candidate might get 1 million or two at the given scenario. So, of those people, as I said earlier, we will have to wait and see till all the names are finalized to see who's going to be the best candidate. Right now, of the two who have been proposed, I'm supporting Sajid Premadasa.
You've already openly declared your support.
There are only two names, right? Of the two, I'm supporting Mr. Sajid Premadasa. I'm very open about it. But if there are other names, let's wait and see.
So, well, it's kind of funny to see because now the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, the candidates who are supporting Ranil Wickremesinghe right now, branded him as the man who robbed the central bank. They blamed him for the sale of the Hambantota port, for converting the Matala airport into a paddy storage facility, and many, many other misdeeds or even corrupt activities, as they called it. And now they are supporting Ranil Wickremesinghe, and as you quite rightly said, quite aggressively. Now, you too, in the 2019 election, had to choose between Sajid Premadasa and Gotabaya Rajapaksa, and you chose the side of Gotabaya Rajapaksa. And of course, in your pursuit of his policy document, you were aggressively against whatever Sajid Premadasa was proposing. So, who has changed their stance? Has presidential candidate announced Sajid Premadasa, has he changed his policy to be more in alignment with yours, or have you changed yours?
Very, very good question, Shalan. Allow me to explain, right? In 2019, when Sajid Premadasa came as the candidate, he was the candidate for the UMP-led alliance, right? And the UMP policies at that time, and the policies that were supporting, I chose the Gotabaya Rajapaksa's Vistas of Prosperity policy document. So, based on those policies, I supported that candidate. But today, Sajid Premadasa is representing SJB, which is, of course, it has inherited part of UMP, but he has very openly told it is not the same UMP, because he has certain different views. He has very openly told that many a times, I'm not UMP, I'm SJB, right? Having discussed with him...
But he's also said that the true UMP is here in the SJB.
Correct. What I'm saying, it has inherited UMP. UMP is there. But when he says, I'm not the same as UMP, that means he's willing to change, no?
He's willing to change, but does that mean he has changed?
Yeah, let me explain. Right?
Okay.
So, if he says, I'm going to pursue the same UMP policy, that's a different story.
So you'll be against that?
I have certain reservations about that. Right? I have certain reservations about that. But right now we are in discussion about certain reforms in that economic policy, and I have understood him to be very much aligned to the way we are also thinking. So at the end of the day, none of us are correct, no? I may have my views. They are not necessarily 100% correct. Others may also have their views. They are not 100% correct. At the end of the day, what is important as professionals, as educated people, we should be able to debate, discuss, and come up with a compromise. So we are trying to come up with that compromise.
Okay. So you don't see yourself coming up with that compromise with any other candidates?
It is not the candidate, right? It is the team also.
The team also?
Team also.
Okay.
I strongly believe to get us out of this crisis, Charlene, no individual can do that alone.
Okay.
Absolutely no way, right? Because I know that through my experience. I was a private sector employee. I served the government voluntarily. Then I did politics for a short while in the opposition. Then I entered the parliament. So I have gone through a learning process. Through that, one thing I have learned is if you want to get this country out of this crisis and develop, you need a very strong team. No individual can do that. Of course, you need a leader who can provide the leadership to that team. Like the Abraham Lincoln provided leadership to a cabinet who could even see eye to eye. They fought each other. But with the leader, they work together. So likewise, we need a team. So right now, I told you there are two candidates in the running at the moment. One is Sajid Premadasa, Honorable Sajid Premadasa, and Honorable Anukumar Sanayaka. Of the two, I believe Mr. Sajid Premadasa can put together a better team. So therefore, I am supporting him.
So you believe he is the more accommodating leader, a leader that you could come to a real compromise with?
I did not know him, let's say 1.5 years ago much. Particularly when we were in the last presidential election, I had not even spoken to him personally. But since we became independent, right, we have started a dialogue, we have started having discussions, we are participating at these meetings, and we were able to make some strong influence on some of the key decisions that was taken during certain parliamentary sessions. For example, classic example is debt restructuring. Right? Originally, SJB view, original view was that they must either support or abstain, right? But then we put our position forward and argued, and some within the SJB also supported, and the leader finally accepted our position, and they collectively took a decision to go and oppose that. So that was the flexibility. That was the flexibility. As I said earlier, I'm not saying everything we say is right. Maybe we could be totally wrong. But I appreciate the fact there was an opportunity to debate, discuss, and come to a final compromise.
So moving forward, of course, you have to also be accepted by the SJB now. You've picked the SJB, the presidential candidate that has been put forward by the SJB as your preferred candidate, but of course that will all be dependent on whether you are accepted. And there seems to be a little bit of an opposition, at least from within the SJB, to certain individuals joining the party, certain opposition also coming from the general public, who might say that you were a part of the SLPP government and therefore responsible for the economic crisis in a way, and therefore should not be allowed a position or entry into the SJB now at this latter stage.
It is sad that few people don't understand the political realities, right? Number one, we are not joining SJB per se, right? Honorable Sajid Premadasa wants to form an alliance. So we are in negotiation to form that alliance. So finally, he used the term Samagi Samdane. I don't know what's going to be the final name. Let's assume that's the name. So that is not SJB. It is an alliance. So which has to compromise and accommodate other views as well. Whereas some people think that all these newcomers are going to join SJB and they are trying to protect their territories. Because certain expertise in certain areas, certain positions, they may be feeling that it's going to be threatened. It's not going to be threatened. Nobody is going to touch the current SJB or their positions or what they've been promised to them, etc. We are trying to form an alliance. In the alliance, finally, the final policy document has to be jointly agreed, and that also has to be done once the full alliance is formed, because some people are still in the process of negotiating. Some people we love to bring them in, but the discussion has not even started, right? So finally it will be an alliance with a certain set of policy documents, and without that alliance it's not easy to win. Now, one of the problems I see with NPP, for example, they are determined that they are not going to come to an alliance. I don't know whether they'll compromise.
Because the NPP is already an alliance in itself. It's not the JVP.
Yes. They say alliance of people, right?
Yes.
Alliance of people.
There are over 20 independent groups, I believe.
Right. I'll come to that. Right? I'll come to that. Because the political parties, they say they are not going to form alliances. Basically, what they mean is they are not they are saying we are not taking existing parliamentarians. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
But if you look at the history of Sri Lanka, since 1956, never there had been a government without forming an alliance. That's a historical truth.
But how far has that worked for Sri Lanka?
It has worked. It has worked in certain cases. It has failed in certain cases. There have been very strong governments, ups and downs, and some of the governments, the vision and the path were disturbed by this very NPP, their former when they were JVPs, right? Remember, we had almost 30 years of war in north and as well as south. So they were disturbing some of the developments that were taking place in the country. That in reality, they have completely forgotten now. They are trying to pretend as if they are a totally new lot, which is not the truth. If you allow me a little time, I'll explain why I say it is not going to be a new thing. It is going to be the old thing. Do you allow me to say?
I think we are in the final few minutes, but I'm pretty sure the general public already knows this. There has been much spoken of about what happened in the 80s and the 70s.
No, I'm trying to say something. This NPP is a farce, in my opinion, because a lot of people who are willingly supportive of this, and even some of those people who participated in this very program, think these professionals who are coming together around NPP will eventually have an opportunity to run the country. It's never going to happen.
But are you speaking from your experience as part of the Vietnam?
I'm talking not only from experience. I'm talking my experience as a politician. at the end of the day, who runs the country?
No, but
Who runs the country?
I raised this point yesterday, quite rightly.
I listened to that. I listened to that. I saw his answer as well.
Yes.
Right? He has got it totally wrong. Right? The country is going to be run by the cabinet. Who forms the cabinet?
Politicians.
Politicians. So in order to become a politician, you have to either contest and enter the parliament or get elected from the national list. How many nationalist MPs you can bring in?
25.
You are not going to get 25. So at most it will be about 10 people. Others have to be elected from those who contest and come. Most of these professionals that you see in NPP, which you admire, good people, nice people like us those days, a lot of expectations, they will not be able to contest because contesting is a different ballgame altogether, Chalan. The grassroots politics, I learned through my experience, right? We had more than 700 in Vietnam. How many people contested? Then out of the people contested, how many people actually performed? It's a different ballgame. So finally, even NPP forms a government, it is not going to be the cabinet that you dream. It's going to be hardcore JVPs who have been doing grassroots level politics for a very, very long period.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nalaka Godahewa, parliamentarian, of course, for your analysis of the current situation. But only time can tell where Sri Lanka is heading. And as I always say, it's up to the general public to vote wisely, to make an informed decision of how and who you will vote for. And it's our responsibility to keep you informed, and we will continue to do just that. Thank you very much for tuning in to another episode of Face to Face. Until we meet again, take care and God bless.